Welcome to the second episode in a Legendarium series about the life of Henry the Young King. In Part 2, Rebel-in-Chief, we will talk about how young Henry organized his brothers and launched a rebellion against his father, King Henry II. King Henry II controlled his four sons, young Henry, Geoffrey, Richard, and John, by playing them off one another. He promised one a coveted estate and title, suddenly withdrew it for some trivial reason, and gave it to another. By the time the three eldest brothers met in Limoges during February 1173 to greet the King of Aragon, they realized that despite their mutual rivalries, all three deeply resented their high-handed and manipulative father. By 1173, young Henry was 18, Richard was 15, and Geoffrey 14. In an age of short lifespans, all three were considered men. Young Henry had a following among the French barons who resented his father's rule, while Richard had the loyalty of the Knights of Aquitaine. Thus, a plot to rebel came into being. Unfortunately for the rebel heirs, their father had planted spies throughout their households. King Henry II rode out of the city on the pretext of a hunting trip, but instead hurried to one castle after another, ordering the commanders to make ready for war. With stunning speed, King Henry II also dismissed his son's household knights and ordered the sullen young prince to accompany him to his stronghold in Normandy. Young Henry remained on a very short leash. He even had to sleep on the floor beside his father's bed. Yet on March 6th, young Henry somehow slipped out of his father's bedroom and fled towards Argenteuil. His furious father, Henry II, set off in hot pursuit. Young Henry, being nominal Duke of Normandy, decided to take his case to his feudal superior, King Louis IV of France. Sensing a chance to weaken his arch-rival Henry II of England, King Louis allowed young Henry to set up a court in Paris. He even helped him to get in touch with his mother, Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. Queen Eleanor was furious that her husband Henry II had been dividing up the Duchy of Aquitaine, which she intended to pass to her favorite son Richard. So she opened her private treasury to her rebellious sons. Their uprising began after Easter on April 15th, 1173. As rebel armies swarmed across western France, the countryside became a desolate ruin of besieged castles and plundered farms. Yet, with three rebel princes and a king in command, there was little coordination, and that would ultimately save King Henry II. Cursing his sons as ingrates, Henry II recruited 20,000 mercenaries from Brabant and ordered them to sweep into his continental possessions. By the end of the summer, the old king had gained the upper hand. Things collapsed for the rebels completely when royal troops captured Eleanor of Aquitaine and imprisoned her. Richard, more sheepheart than Lionheart this time, fled the battlefront. With no choice, Henry the young king surrendered to his father. Young Henry then went on campaign with his father across France, helping to stamp out the rebellion he had started. Young Henry remained at his father's side through the Christmas court of 1174 at Argenteuil. Henry the young king kept the peace until 1175, when his father Henry II met with a papal legate to discuss a divorce from his rebellious wife Eleanor. Had the divorce gone through, all his children by Eleanor, including young Henry, would have been disinherited. It seems that he planned to legitimize a son he had with his mistress Rosamund. If it had gone through, that son would have become King of England and Lord of much of western France. All too aware that he could lose everything, young Henry began recruiting some of the nobles who fought for him during the failed rebellion of 1173 and 74. He also tried to recruit his younger brother Richard, but Richard resented young Henry for surrendering to their father. Far worse, King Henry II still had spies in his son's household. In this case, he had recruited the young king's vice-chancellor, Adam de Churchadun. After young Henry learned that de Churchadun had sabotaged his plans for a second rebellion by leaking a letter to his father, young Henry put de Churchadun on trial in a court pact with his followers. However, the Bishop of Poitiers thwarted the trial, noting that de Churchadun was also the Deacon of York and could not be condemned by a secular court, being a churchman. Frustrated, young Henry ordered that de Churchadun be disrobed and whipped through the streets of Poitiers on his way to jail in Argenteuil. Young Henry further ordered de Churchadun to be taken out and flogged at every single town he passed through. Of course, de Churchadun died before ever getting close to Argenteuil, just as young Henry wanted. Will young Henry ever be able to mount a successful rebellion against his father and keep his inheritance? We will find out in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this installment of the Legendarium. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.